Thanks for everyone for registering and joining this event. We can get started. I'd like to introduce myself, Sales Choice, a little bit first. So welcome to our Sales Intelligence webinar series brought to you by Sales Choice, and we specialize in ending revenue uncertainty for human advantage. I'm your host, Jen Yim. I'm the Director of Product and Marketing here at Sales Choice, and we have three services powered by our AI platform. There's Sales Insights, which helps sales professionals with guided insights. Mood Insights, which connects frontline voices to leadership. And third is our AI and Data Science as a Service, where we design, build, and maintain AI models with a new focus on generative AI. And over the years, we've made a giant treasure chest of thought leadership content and white papers, podcasts, webinars, and more. And I direct people to go to saleschoice.com/resources if you'd like to check that out. And we've got a few more just letting people in. Yeah, so we've been hosting a lot of different kind of people, but today we have with us Tom Snyder. Tom, can you tell us a bit more about your journey?
Yeah, to make it brief, I started my career out of graduate school in politics, found that to be utterly miserable, ended up becoming a serial entrepreneur, started and sold a number of companies, and along that road became fascinated with the science of selling, science meaning the literal word science of selling.
Awesome. And next, we know him very well. He's our CEO, Malay Upadhyay. But Malay, can you tell us how you got here?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge and thank Tom for sharing his time with us today, and to everyone in the audience for joining us. Thank you so much. Um, Jen, it is lovely to be back. It's been a while. Malay Upadhyay, I'm the CEO at Sales Choice, and I've been in this company for close to 8 years, where I've had the luxury and the privilege of working closely with so many of our clients on their AI journey enablement. It is a topic close to my heart. It is a topic I teach executives globally. I have a few books out there. And it's a passion that I've shared with Dr. Cindy Gordon, our CEO, of course, for quite some time. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And now that Tom, you've stressed on the importance of the science behind selling, absolutely thrilled to be unpacking it with you. I did also forget to acknowledge Tyler for all the help in setting this up. So thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. And I'm just going to turn it over to our CEO, Dr. Cindy Gordon, to start the conversation.
Thanks, Jen and Malay, Tom, Tyler, and for everyone that's here. We've got really an interesting conversation organized. We want to kind of start off with Tom sharing a little bit of his perspectives on the evolution of the science, but also the art of selling in terms of the funnel evolution. Malay's going to pick it up and talk about some of the insights that we've learned in applying AI for in funnel intelligence. And then we're going to kind of open it up between Tom, myself, and Malay, just sharing some lessons learned. And we really encourage you, if you have any questions, to put them into the chat. And Jen's going to sort of monitor those and then bring them back. But we thought a really interesting conversation, and I really want to turn it over to Tom to start off with the backdrop, because you've seen so many approaches to CRM success, but yet the same realities still prevail that I think are very important in the hype that we're maybe underway right now with evolution to agentic AI. So over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it. Couple of really important points about sales funnels. Most companies believe wholeheartedly they have a sales funnel. Having examined more than 1,000 of them, I can assure you they don't have it in the sense of what it's really meant to do. It's not just a memorialization tool, it's actually a strategic tool. So what most people are doing with a funnel is they are charting the stages according to the activity by a salesperson. We add someone as a sales qualified lead. We determine through our quote discovery meeting that we have a qualified opportunity. We move through several stages towards close, and each of those stages represents some activity a salesperson does. That has no more of a predictive index and no more of a strategic tool. It's really just an inspection tool of what sellers are doing. So if you're going to have an accurate funnel and you're going to use it as a not just a tool to forecast, but actually a strategic tool, it has to have the driver of how buyers buy. A customer decision journey determines everything. What the seller needs to do is recognize which stage of the decision journey the decision makers are in, and then craft their interactions and strategy according to that. Now, if we do that correctly, then we will eliminate the curse of most corporate sales funnels, which is they're larded with wishes and dreams and hopes and aspirations, and the smallest little portion are real opportunities. One of the things you can do is you can think about, well, if I'm thinking about sales time as my most precious asset as a seller, am I actually putting that to its best and highest use? And the litmus test, when a funnel is constructed correctly, will tell you immediately if you are doing that. One of the things I always challenge people at is, in your sales funnel, does do those opportunities in that funnel move backward as well as forward based on a continuing bit of validation and uncovering information that sellers do? If nothing ever moves backward, if everything or too many things or too often things reach a certain stage and stall, and we keep telling ourselves as sellers, it's going to work, it's really going to work, I promise, and it's not moving backward based on information we're uncovering or attempting to uncover, then we really have no funnel at all. We have a tool that memorializes salesperson activity and nothing more. One of the best ways to understand how we win fast and lose fast is a funnel constructed principally around the customer decision journey and using it to guide sales strategy and sales execution. That evolution is still very embryonic. Having looked at more than 1,000 corporate funnels, I can count on two hands the number that, when we encountered them, actually had that as the principal asset driving its formation and use. After companies embrace that idea, how do I use a customer decision journey to drive my funnel? Miracles happen. Forecasts become quite accurate. Salespeople become more productive. Time to close deal reduces. All these dreams of sales leaders. So it's a big topic, giving you just a few minutes of it, but I would leave you with the question: to what extent does the funnel in your company recognize stages based on customer behavior as opposed to seller behavior?
Tom, this is such a key foundation. And as I ask Malay to sort of pick up the perspective of the customer interactions, I really love the fact that you talked about the to and fro and, underpinning the design of the workflow logic. So it deals with, key insights. One of the terms we used to use when I was at Xero was called pathway to closure, which was basically a structure of the decisions the customer had to go through. And the customer actually filled in their answers, and that actually created the forecast enablement. So a lot of this is good thoughtful design from the customer's buyer journey perspective. But thank you so much. Malay, over to you to pick up some of the insights that we've been learning in our journey.
Thanks, Cindy. Tom, thanks for setting the stage. I think it's a good segue to bring in AI into the fold, partly because it's a topic that's been drilled to death in all our minds. And yes, it's apparent that it's very useful in helping draw some of those insights from the funnels and automate it. But the question that still remains is, how do you envision how AI can truly help sales besides what's being brought to us by these different vendors? And that piece starts with a vision, something similar to what Tom just laid out. So let's try and unpack that a bit and see if it makes sense and helps better visualize just how it can influence and help sell in a better way. If you go to the next slide. Now, From the buyer's perspective, whether you are in a B2C industry or a B2B industry, the process of purchase remains pretty much more or less the same. What changes is the focus area or the amount of time and effort that is spent in each of these stages between the different industries. In every single case, the story, I would say, from a buyer, from a customer's perspective, starts by developing an awareness of the offering that is being brought to the table, a consideration of whether to engage with that offering, that proposition of purchase, and an evaluation, both of which tend to depend on the credibility. How believable and trustworthy do you think the product or the company or the seller is? Which then leads us to a negotiation and purchase. As I mentioned, in B2B, of course, this is a pretty heavy stage, but in B2C, it's much more limited. Followed up with setup and training, which is to say, helping you adopt the product and get accustomed to it so as to derive the value that you expect. And then it moves on to the support and the general experience with regards to the usage that you are getting, followed by loyalty. Now, this entire cycle is designed for one thing: to lead any customer to a stage of resonance. That's what the likes of Apple and Nike and Coca-Cola managed to do that few other companies do. That is the reason why there are companies or storefronts even in Japan that are 1,000 years old and still surviving. It's not because of the sheer margins, it's how they have gotten to it that has made them stand the test of time and turn their customers almost into their fans, loyal fans who would get angry if something were to be questioned. And that stage is what any seller should be aiming to reach, one way or the other, any organization should be aiming to reach. Where AI can come into the picture is in when you turn this particular cycle and look at it from a seller's perspective. So if you go to the next screen, the cycle that most of you will be well aware of in the audience is this one, which is another way to look at what we just saw, only from a seller perspective. It looks like your standard generation of leads. They're nurturing opportunities that you pursue, negotiate, sign deals, and then you start off with the support and retention strategies. But when you start looking at these same stages from a buyer's perspective, now what you're starting to do is think of every stage and engagement from a buyer's perspective, much of which is subjective. It's in the mind. That's what resonance by definition is. And that's where AI can come in and help you. AI can help you because at its core, what it's trying to do is one of three things. It's trying to generate insights for you. It's trying to automate the tasks that you already have in play. And it's giving you good, timely content that you can leverage to try and sell better. Insights, automation, and content, if you start to apply to these stages tactically, keeping in mind the goal you're trying to achieve in terms of being in your customer's head, it can empower you in ways that would otherwise not have been possible. Now, what does all of this mean? What does it mean for you practically? How can AI achieve all this? So let's go to the next slide. At every stage of this process, today we have an AI tool or part of a tool that can help deliver a key missing piece to help you sell better or process or progress better from that stage over to the next. All of which keeps in mind your customers' behaviors and attending to what they truly want. For example, starting with lead generation. In lead generation, for a while now, we have had more tactical and informed leads being generated, or companies trying to. And of course, by tactical and timely, part of it relates to the ICP that you have, your ideal customer profile. But add to that now two attributes: intent and personality. Intent deals with their actual behaviors or things that they're doing or things that are happening to your leads that can have a strong correlation to them wanting to purchase or needing your product at some point. That is called intent tracking. The problem with intent tracking so far has been that most solutions out there track intent by accounts. And by accounts, what it means is if in, let's say, our company, Cindy is looking for a software, but I fit your ideal customer profile, the software will tell you to contact me. And Cindy and I may have no connection on this particular topic. So you are effectively reaching out to me cold. AI driven intent tracking changes or shifts the focus from account based to contact based. And their correlations become very important. But equally important becomes the personality. Personality is an inherently subjective piece. But what ends up happening is when you track someone's personality properly, you now know that the way to reach out or the words to use when you're communicating with Cindy or myself or Tom is, is going to be completely different. The same thing may resonate with me, but not so much with the others. And vice versa. I may like things to be too detailed, Cindy may like things to be to the point. Identifying personality and clubbing it with contact level intent is something that's only possible with AI because that level of analysis you can't do on your own. You don't have all the time in the world to do it. And that brings us to the next key attribute that AI brings to the table. Whether it's in stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4, a lot of what AI can do for you is not replace you, as many of you may think, but it's to augment what you can do as an individual. If you could reach out to 50 people in a day, AI can help ensure that those 50 are the right people and that you reach out to them or reach outs happen through you or your profiles, whether it's on LinkedIn or WhatsApp or email, without you having to lift a finger. And that those reach outs are tweaked to the personality of those 50 people so that all the time that you would have otherwise spent, it would have taken you 5 days to reach out to those 50 people in a comprehensive way, and in which case it would no longer be timely. They would have already seen other software by then. Now you can achieve meaningful reach outs in a timely fashion at a much larger scale. And that, in a nutshell, is how AI can help you leverage funnel intelligence, true funnel intelligence, to enhance your sales process. As you go on further and further, the same themes tend to come back. Consider, for example, after the purchase or even during the purchase, the documents that have to be signed, all of that has been automated for a while now, no surprises there. But now you have generative AI, which is essentially bringing in content that can take half the work out of your hands when it comes to engaging and addressing customer queries or answering them in a reliable way. These things have been there for a few years now, but they weren't effective enough to be put to use in a practical sense in a way that you could just trust the system to do its job. That is fundamentally what's changing as we are going through this. And all of that works only and only if you understand and keep in mind that the idea is not for AI to come in and replace you. The idea is for you to get the kind of insights you otherwise couldn't get in a timely fashion, or to take an action that you otherwise couldn't take in a timely fashion, so that you can start focusing on the buyer's perspective, which is the very first version of this wheel that I showed you a while back. That, in a nutshell, is what funnel intelligence using AI can potentially look like. But of course, to make sense of it and to get value out of it, you have to understand it first, which is where your homework comes into the picture. I know I've been going on for a while. Before I go to my final slide, I believe after this, I'm going to pause, see if there are any questions or if Cindy or Tom, either of you have any comments to add.
I think Tom's probably got lots. I can see his wheelhouse going around and around. So Tom, builds, challenges. What are you thinking here?
It would be impossible for me to overstate how important many of the things Malay just offered up are. First of all, let's talk about time. One of the and what did I have in my first slide? Time is the most precious asset a seller has, and putting that time to its best and highest use is the continual should be the continual focus of the salesperson, the sales manager, the sales leadership. We have burdened salespeople with many, many things we want them to do for other constituencies besides generating revenue. So now that time has become even more precious. So with these things that AI can do to unburden you of things that are either indirectly, tangentially, or unrelated to sales, phenomenal. I don't know if everyone appreciates the depth of that excitement that someone from our perspective really has. That's incredible. That's incredible force multiplication. Number two, the idea of speed, the idea of being able to gain insights that both, if you could do it, which I doubt is within the frame of human possibility, but it would take enormous amounts of effort, enormous amounts of time you don't have. You'd basically be a researcher. You wouldn't be selling anything. So from the standpoint of the power of AI, the other thing that I love about it is it's so congruent with the points that I will tell you with passion. I do my job as an avocation and a vocation. I love the science of selling. One of those pillars, there's three, and one of the most important pillars is this idea of a customer decision journey, recognizing the power of that as a template for everything. And that is exactly what Malay was offering up in terms of insight, intel, unburdening you of a number of things about research and producing some of the things that are really necessary to take advantage of it. I could talk about it for 5 hours, but hugely fascinated by where we are.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, and I think this is a really good segue because when I sort of look at your comments and also what Malay was outlining, it really brings in the importance of thoughtful design across the whole strategic enablement and thinking through the customer insights that you want to garner. So, Malay, I think if you can build on the design point, because that's where we see a lot of the issues,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, happy to, and thank you, Tom, for that acknowledgement, and the enthusiasm. This truly does illustrate how exciting things can get in this space, which you're absolutely right. Not many people realize naturally. Um, when it comes to leveraging all these pieces, going to Cindy's point on design, what she is effectively referring to is you can't just AI is not like a person you just hire and they come in and they start to work, right? It needs some homework of its own, something we call AI readiness. And there are ways to understand and improve your organizational AI readiness. One of which, of course, is to understand, look at the data and the processes that are in place. There are three things that AI needs to be successful: data, process, and talent. Talent, because even to use this, and in most cases to customize a software to how your sales process work, needs some work. But the process itself, foundationally, needs to be one that enables and empowers an AI tool before it can enable and empower us. And the same thing is true for data, garbage in and garbage out. These things relate to not only how data is being captured, but how clearly are all the steps involved in your sales process, sales cadence, as well as information related to your customers, potential or current, how well they are being logged and being rendered or treated along the way. And that includes, of course, reviewing the insights that are coming out of something. If you talk to a data scientist, for example, without getting too technical, there are so many ways in which the same numbers can be interpreted or insights can be interpreted that it often comes down to almost a creative exercise at times. That's why you need to make sure that you are not misinterpreting something and thereby going in a wrong direction. And that's what data process and talent readiness looks like. It helps not to have to be, super expert in coding or development, but just to understand AI in a similar way that you're able to use your laptop right now or phones, whatever you're logging in through. No one is expecting you to build one, but you are expected today to understand how it works. consider AI in same relation to where computers were when they were first launched back in the 90s, personal computers, I mean. And you will understand the ubiquity that we are potentially looking at and why you need to familiarize yourself, at least at a basic conceptual level. KPIs or metrics alignment. Imagine a model, AI model, that makes predictions with 99% accuracy. Sounds pretty amazing. But now take that same prediction and apply it to a self-driving vehicle. If the vehicle tends to mistakenly think there's an obstacle and starts to slow down or stop, it is not the end of the world. It's not ideal. But instead, let's say it's perfect at, never slowing down, detecting obstacles properly. But what if the problem is that the vehicle sometimes fails to detect an obstacle and keeps going fast? Now you're talking about an issue that's fatal. So it's not important for a model to just be 99% accurate. That 1% problem, what kind of problem it is also important. And the only way you realize it is if you have the right metrics measuring the output from a solution. In our case, at SalesChoice, so many sales teams use our software and they all have their own understanding of their opportunities. And many times they question, hey, why is the AI saying this? Why is it making predictions based off these fields and not those ones that I thought is important? At the end of the day, we have to understand that we have our own biases and our own understanding, which is experiential, but not necessarily always validated. And that's why the best results come out when when the technology and humans work together versus, it being either or. Reinforcement learning, which is point number 5, and explainability and transparency, point number 6, refers to two things fundamentally. Number 1, any AI solution that you use should be able to explain itself, transparently show how it is arriving at the predictions that it is making. And that's important because only then can you make contextual and informed decisions. The problem, of course, is you cannot have that with a lot of clarity with AI models that are truly comprehensive and complex, like deep learning and such. But some level of explainability still is extremely crucial. At the very least, an AI system should have its own audit mechanism where it can at least tell you how accurate it's being in day-to-day affairs and making its predictions. That much is definitely possible. And at the same time, because no AI system is 100% accurate, it should have an inbuilt mechanism, which AI models generally do, to be able to learn and improve with time as business realities change, because business realities always keep changing. The same concept or logic that is used to make predictions today may not work because your business may go through product change, the market may change, the customer demands may change, the pricing may change. There's so many things. An AI model should be able to adapt with some human support, of course, to be able to stay current. As long as those things are taken care of, you can be fairly certain that you not only have an enabler in the tool or tools that you're using, but you're also in a position to call out the bluff when the tool starts to misfire and then course correct from there. Right, back to you.
Yeah, Malay, you're raising some really key points on the human in the loop. And it's also at the stage of maturity that we have too in AI enablements, right? That, the higher is the application, you need to verify. And I think the other key point is from a regulatory point of view, you can't sue an algorithm, right? So we need humans to make the decisions, right? The humans are the risk factors. And that's really important that we all internalize that. If something goes wrong, it's the humans that have the liability, at least at this point in time. Tom, any perspective builds on what Malay has just shared? Because I know we probably have some questions coming in here too.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments, and I think our company has been exploring and has been experimenting with a number of AI tools. We are not technologists. We're experts in training and consulting around sales performance. But we're also not technologically ignorant. And I think the difference between what you're talking about on this slide and what is principally available is night and day. And I don't know if people really appreciate the breadth of that delta. So if you think about something that, a lot of people are getting, I would say, lazy about and using something like Chat GPT to write all kinds of things, it doesn't meet any of these things. It's a wondrous tool in terms of what it can do and the speed with which it can do it. It's a lousy tool in the sense of, is it really giving you the kind of quality that is appropriate, like this can do? Does it have an apparent way of telling you where all this is coming from? Does it have an ability? No, and it doesn't claim to, by the way. So I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying they are not even in the same universe of the tools you're talking about here. And I don't know if I think that Sales Choice is on so much at the cutting edge. I don't know if people actually appreciate the depth of this difference. And I would really encourage folks. I'm not trying to advertise. I'm telling you, it's enthusiasm. And this is really worth considering. Every one of these 6 points is extraordinarily important to you in terms of the future that is possible and the future you don't want to get left behind on. That's it.
Tom, we'll just take that wonderful gift. Thank you. I think the biggest nuance here is the behavioral analytics. We're at a point where there's hybrids of solutions, right? And best of breed, and none of us have it right. But what is key is the foundation that you guys are talking about on the following the customer heartbeat and ensuring you do not lose sight of that across all of the noise, right? And I also appreciate the points that we've all talked about, which is the importance of critical thinking, right? Microsoft just released a report on the concerns of AI diminishing critical thinking. So the human in the loop is a very key, I think, positioning foundation for all really wise professionals, right? Okay, so next
Cindy,
slide.
can I interrupt you for just 1 minute?
Sure.
Two things. First of all, I think that point also is interesting. Think of this as terrific force multiplication, not replacement. I know there's lots of fear out there that AI will replace sellers. Every bit of research we've done says that isn't true. What is true is that force multiplication will make you more effective if you know how to do it, number one. Number two, I said before that one of the three major pillars of sales performance is understanding the customer decision journey. Now, what's interesting to me is the model of customer decision journey makes the assumption that all decision makers have the same personality. They discount, or by nature it can't be included because it's far too complicated. I think having a tool that gives you some sort of insight into that is extraordinary. And I say again, force multiplication. I just want to offer that up.
Yeah, the nice thing is in some it's pro and con, all the digital footprints, right? We just have to be careful how the interpretation is and the potential issues on citizen data being analyzed, which is another, I think, hurdle as we continue to evolve in on these programs. So we're at the stage now for lessons learned, and I want to be a little bit sensitive to time. I'm just going to check, Jen, how much time do we have? Okay, so we're okay. Okay, awesome. So Malay, can I maybe turn it over to you? And Tom, this is just a backdrop, and just if you don't mind, just openly sharing some of the nuggets, right? Like, what are the main takeaways that you want people here based on the context that we've talked about? So maybe Malay, I can ask you just to clarify what you think they are, just a couple sound bites.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if you've been listening to a lot of what's been discussed, one of the key pieces over here is to ensure that you are in a position to retrieve the right intelligence from your sales funnels, and that comes down to not only your general workflow process that's in place, but also having the right tools and cadence to be able to procure that information in a timely fashion. And that starts off with having the right purpose in mind. The clarity of purpose is very important. Using tools for the sake of them or to sell more is not going to work. You have to understand deeply what exactly is missing currently in your sales process or reach outs or behaviors that you want to address. And only then do you have a shot at truly filling in the gaps that currently exist or bringing in AI to leverage and help them. The second is the human factor, because becomes extremely important. um, when Tom mentions that research says that there could be a replacement of people, as I mentioned, one thing that's abundantly clear is that there's a lot hiding in context in the details in this research and the output. And specifically, what I mean by that is AI. You may have heard this already by now. AI is not going to replace people; it's going to replace people who don't know how to leverage it. And there's a difference between these two things. So, you as a salesperson, you may have AI automate a lot of what you do today, but I stand to benefit if a tool or a machine can take care of a lot of the repetitive, predictable tasks that otherwise engage me and keep me busy and stop me from engaging in more productive output on a daily basis. And the same thing has been true forever. Job replacements have been happening with every new technological insurgence since the Industrial Revolution. So that's not where there is something new. It's really about how you adapt that defines whether your job is at risk or you actually stand to benefit more out of it. But with that, for to cover off the other points, let me turn it back to Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Malay. I want to make, as a kind of closing lesson learned, leave you with some things that I hope are provocative in terms of your thinking. When it says designing a customer journey end-to-end workflow logic, if you think about the customer journey, there are many, 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 many models of it that you can Google today. As far as we have seen, every one of them is missing an important point, and that is what is the representation of the cusps between the stages. I'll leave that as something to have you think about. The second piece of that is the idea that qualification is often regarded as a step in a sales process. That's false. That's misleading. That doesn't work. Qualification is a process that overlays every stage in a sales process and continues on during the service part of an agreement you have with an existing customer and has a profound effect on renewals if you're in that business or expanding with an existing customer into new business. It'd be hard to overstate the degree to which just that little idea of qualification is probably revolutionary to most of you. There are three other things that fall out of this idea of properly constructing a sales funnel around a properly researched customer decision journey. If done, everything falls in place. Revenue is the speed with which opportunities close it increases. The clarity of what's in the funnel really begins to be quite transparent to everyone that takes a look at it. Customer engagement absolutely increases, and some other kind of tertiary benefits, like our research would say, employee and salesperson turnover goes down by more than 30%. That there is a degree of satisfaction on the customer's part that's higher. A lot of things go. So there is a wealth of lessons to be learned here. And my point is just to give some provocative thought for your consideration.
Thanks so much, Tom. The point on the qualification loop, because at the end of the day, it's always important to stop, pause, think, reflect, and inspect, right? So qualification in the context of that particular desired outcome. I think that's a really, really important reinforcement point, that we're never safe. It's just that reflection constantly about where you're at. And I mean, say from the perspective of being alert. People change, right? And that can have huge impacts on a sales cycle, right? Or on the renewals, right? To be very, very alert to the multiple stakeholders, and also certainly the more complexity with engagements that require, multiple stakeholders in an account. All right, Jen, over to you to open it up. Do we have any questions coming in, Jen?
We sure do. Actually, let me go back to, I think, where was the Q&A slide? Okay, so one question, I think this is for Tom. So the question was, it was mentioned that salespeople are super confident that they can get it done, but our system has questions a manager can ask at any stage, causing the salesperson to have to provide business's justification why the opportunity is at that stage. The question is, does it always have to go backwards, or could it just be classified as no real potential?
Okay, that's actually a compound question. I'm going to take it apart. First of all, of course, there is no requirement that something goes backwards. There are deals that do remain in a stage for a fixed period of time for very good reasons. And that doesn't mean that every time you don't have something that moves it quickly from one stage to another, it needs to move backwards. My problem is if you look at the research, so often when something stalls in a certain stage, sellers just leave it there and they keep convincing themselves there's another reason for that. I do want to emphasize that, and this may be too much, but if you have adopted a properly constructed sales funnel, there are 4 questions that a seller needs to ask themselves before and after every encounter with a decision maker in order to keep focus. And simply stated, do I have evidence an opportunity exists? Do I have evidence we can compete? Do I have evidence we can win? Do I have evidence we can fill the value expectation of the customer? Obviously, those go in sequence, they're chronological, but we reflect on them because if we have a properly constructed funnel, it tells us everything. That's the second of the 3 pillars. But I would say no, there's no requirement. I love the idea, by the way, that managers have a template of questions to investigate with a seller in order to keep that seller from getting rose-colored glasses. I love that. I think it's terrific.
And then the next question, I think this might have been asked while you were speaking, Cindy, so I'm just potentially going to direct it to you. But it was just simply if you can comment on roles versus personality.
Sure. Well, first of all, in terms of personality, there's a whole methodology for analyzing personality profiles, right? Whether someone's an amiable, persona, or whether someone's a highly analytical, or expressive. So it's a whole body of personality research that we have mapped to sales, I'd say customer behaviors and employee behaviors. With sentiment mining and AI, you can aggregate lots of sound bites. How maybe Cindy's speaking now, maybe looking at articles that I've written, whatever you could find, you could probably, with AI, I know with AI, you could determine my personality profile, which to Malay's earlier point would then determine maybe how best to approach Cindy, right? I'm highly expressive. I like to use happy faces. And so, my character is, of that venue. So, I think it's just really important to know that there are amazing software tools that can analyze the buyer and the employee profile to help you alter your communication approaches. In terms of roles, that I would need a little bit more context because there are multiple roles in sales funnels, right? Depending on the complexity of the sale. So I'm thinking of roles in the context of selling professionals. But it also impacts the customer in terms of the role that they have and also their, breadth of leadership accountability for, creating the runway that you can actually get to the closed outcome. So yeah, but I would need more context, but hopefully that gives some context. It's very exciting, honestly, to be in a world where AI can best craft an appropriate message for that particular persona type and be accurate. The key thing is don't eliminate your own critical thinking, because you have to recognize that what may surface up, maybe you should pause and just do a little bit more checking before accepting. Um, so it's like with most things, spend a little bit more reflection time. You'll probably get a better approach. Or you may have seen something that you think could have a major, could sort of alter what the initial maybe positioning was. Yes,
Okay.
other questions that you have, Jen?
Next question we've got is it really possible to have an accurate forecast given the difference in sales personalities?
Malay?
Um, it depends on the industry that you're operating in and the product you're trying to sell. For example, regardless of the personality, we all need and want a toothbrush. Once we have established our product, let's say the said toothbrush for a particular customer segment, then we can be fairly certain that they are going to go after it, regardless, of what, at a certain frequency. Software sales or any other B2B selling, of course, can be slightly different from that in the sense that there are multiple decision makers involved, and therefore you're dealing with multiple personalities. So, in my view, it is helpful and definitely feasible to have a decent forecast, given that no system can make predictions with 100% accuracy. You can have a decent enough forecast without taking personality into the equation, but personality can help you bump it up by a few critical percentage points, that last mile, so to speak, which otherwise may not have been possible. The difference, however, is in the fact that personality doesn't have so much to do with your odds of winning a deal as depicted by AI or any tool, because that's a mathematical calculation depending on your historical success or failure with the company. Personality has to do with you turning a given forecast into something more by approaching the customer in a certain way. And what I mean by that, simply put, is because I've had a lot of success with a certain industry, selling a certain type of product at a certain time of the year in my logistics industry, I can have a forecast fairly accurate based on all those parameters that are already what they are. What I could do, however, is make sure that I don't screw it up by reaching out to my customer, engaging them in a way that they would not like to be engaged, and making sure that that deal actually goes through. That's where personality comes into the equation. Where personality also comes into the equation is before this entire sales journey even starts at the opportunity level, where while they are still at the lead level, when they're not really featuring in our forecasts, making sure that we can bring them to the table in the first place is where personality identification can prove a great deal in helping ensure that I catch their interest. Forecast is dealing with what happens in between these two ends of the conversation.
Thanks, Malay. Tom, what are your thoughts there? I've got a couple of quick comments, Tom.
I just think for one thing, we have to decide what the word accuracy means. I think, it is definitely possible to get in the average situation of business to business sales, an accuracy level of, well over 90%. A lot of funnels come pre-wired with a 90% weighted average, and it's just plucked out of thin air. I think there are many, many ways. I'm certain that Malay is right. Adding the personality element gives you additional percentage points of accuracy. And I totally agree. It's impossible to have 100% accuracy. Our data would tell you that the average, if you forget about how sales leaders and sales managers monkey with the numbers, if you just look at the average sales funnel, the average accuracy of that funnel for near term evaluation, call that a month or a quarter, generally is somewhere in the 60 to 70% range. I don't know if we tolerate any inaccuracy in business, in any aspect of business, with that broad of an inaccuracy besides sales forecast. And now we let the leaders monkey with the numbers based on educated guesswork, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, the most of the CFOs we talk to always like to discount, right? The objective is they'd rather come in with a much more conservative point of view, but also see that sales actually overachieves, but to manage risk, right? So there is that dynamic. What we've also seen, honestly, with really good quality of data and logical constructs, you can get to levels that are far more accurate than humans. But it takes a lot of foundational structures and reinforcement into the different sales cadence modalities, which is still where we see gaps and people not having the conversations where the tools can apply at the right point in time, because you have to alter how you're communicating with your sales reps, right? If these tools just have to be integrated into the dialogue, right? Much more deeply. So I think, Jen, I don't know if you've got any last question, but I know we're probably getting close to wrap up
Yeah,
here.
I think there's just one final follow-up from the same person who asked Tom that earlier. Actually, no, the roles versus personality one. And their follow-up was, isn't a clear understanding of all the roles and needs of each person at the buyer's table more important than personality? That's our final question here.
Tom?
But yeah, I'll make a couple of comments. I think I could argue that question is answered yes, but with a giant asterisk. Yes, it is more important to know the buying role, the decision role that people at that decision table are playing, and there are identifiable roles. Not everybody has the same vote, not everybody has the same perspective, and a great seller needs to be able to separate voices from voters. Being able to identify that is a critical issue. And if you know a bunch of personalities, but you don't know the buyer roles, you are well impaired in terms of making that sale. But if we can assess the personalities, we have more information and better information for how to communicate what's valuable to those folks playing each of those different roles.
Yeah, Tom, I totally reinforce what you're saying there, because I've been in some huge, huge sales cycles. And by knowing the mapping of the personalities, we would alter who actually would be there in the closing discussions. And a good sales professional knows if their personality profile is not a fit, and that they will bring in another key stakeholder. And yeah, just especially in coverage. And I think that really makes a huge difference. It's that breadth of perspective and the attitude that we're all there to win and close out the opportunity. But your voice alone is usually not sufficient especially in mid to large companies with more complicated sales cycles. But thank you. So Jen, over to you for closing comments.
Sure. Again, thanks to all of our listeners for joining us today, and thank you, Tom, for joining us for this amazing chat. And just directing everyone again to go to saleschoice.com/resources, where we've got tons more of webinar content like this, as well as podcasts that Cindy hosts and white papers, etc. Thanks.